In this installment, we're going to be going over the divisional round for the playoffs on Draftkings between the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Kansas City Chiefs, and the New York Giants going up against the Philadelphia Eagles. Let's get into it. Hey, yo! Welcome back to the channel. It's your boy Chef D, and I'm here to give you the winning ingredients for your Saturday divisional round playoffs on DraftKings. We have great matchups here. NFC East matchups between the Giants and the Eagles, and a rematch of earlier this season between the Jaguars and the Kansas City Chiefs. But before I deep dive into that, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Make sure you're following me on Instagram and Twitter at MetsNetsJetsD. Don't forget about that TikTok at Chef_D91. And don't forget about the Patreon if you want more DFS, betting, and fantasy football advice. All those links will be provided down below. The first position we're going to go over will be the quarterback position. And we're going to start at the top, work our way down. Pretty much essentially all these quarterbacks are in phenomenal spots this week, okay? Now, the first guy we're going to talk about will be Patrick Mahomes, all right? The least out of all these would be Patrick Mahomes that has the decent matchup. He has the worst matchup out of all these guys between him and Daniel Jones, but Daniel Jones has more of a rushing upside here. But Patrick Mahomes at $8,000 in salary. They already played earlier this season between the Jaguars and the Kansas City Chiefs, and in that particular game in Week 10, Patrick Mahomes went off, okay? 330 yards passing, 4 TDs, chipped in with 39 rushing yards as well. So, will Doug Peterson adjust to that in this Jaguars defense in the second half of the season and in the playoffs? All right, you saw what they were able to do against the Los Angeles Chargers. All those yards, really, all those points came off a short fields, all right? There was 4 interceptions allowing the Chargers short fields to score points, all right? They did not give up big, long drives to Jacksonville Jaguars. They played very, very stout. So, I probably will see a more motivated Jaguars defense in this particular game, and we won't see that same exact performance from Patrick Mahomes that he did in Week 10. This is a better defense now. So at $8,000 in salary, I'm expecting 30 plus fantasy points right here. But the matchup, if we go at fantasy points allowed to that QB position, we're gonna go over here, go to the QBs. The Jacksonville Jaguars have been allowing, they're right in the middle, 16th overall, 22nd in the red zone, about 240 yards passing, about 1.4 TDs a game. All right, so that's going to be the average we should see from Patrick Mahomes. He's most likely going to get you 2 TDs in this game anyway. All right, so Jacksonville Jaguars have been playing better defense, but we're talking about Patrick Mahomes here. He still has that upside, but if we're comparing him with everyone else, I might bump him down. We'll talk about some other guys that are in better matchups. All right, let's continue on to Jalen Hurts for the Philadelphia Eagles going up against the New York Giants here at $7,600 in salary. Jalen Hurts came back in Week 18, got some work after being off for a couple of weeks. He looked pretty decent in his comeback game against the Giants in Week 18. We're looking at fantasy points allowed to that QB position. These New York Giants are currently 23rd overall, 21st in the red zone, allowing 236 yards passing, 1.8 TDs a game. So pretty much 2 TDs, about 240 yards passing, all right? So Jalen Hurts in this game, he should be fine. One of the weaknesses of the Giants is fantasy points allowed to the wide receiver. So that's going to bode well for Jalen Hurts. Plus, you add the upside of him rushing the football. He's seeing around 5+ attempts each and every game, and he's going to be a key factor there. I expect a big blow-up game from him. Obviously, he only got 9 fantasy points. This was his first game back. They just wanted him to get active and acclimated for this playoff push. And as you can see, before that game, before his injury, 39, 30, 37, and 32. All right. In that previous game in Week 14, he had 30 fantasy points against the Giants, 77 rushing yards and a TD, Also chipped in 217 pass yards and 2 TDs. So dual threat quarterback here. I love Jalen Hurts against these New York Giants here. Kirk Cousins was able to throw all over the Giants. Jalen Hurts can do that and add the rushing upside. So this is going to be a play that I like more than Patrick Mahomes at a cheaper price. Okay. Next quarterback we're going to bring up will be Trevor Lawrence here. Trevor Lawrence here at $6,000 in salary. He technically has the best matchup on the board out of all quarterbacks. This is him playing on Saturday. He is still undefeated on Saturday. And now going up against these Chiefs, who we already saw earlier this year, 29th overall and 31st in the red zone. This defense has been giving up a ton of yards and touchdowns to opposing quarterbacks. All right, let's see how he did in that previous matchup against the Kansas City Chiefs. If we go to week 10, Trevor Lawrence had 20.96 fantasy points, 260 yards passing, 2 TDs. All right, I expect him to do something similar to that. Maybe we get a couple more TDs. Maybe we get some more rushing attempts. Maybe we get a rushing touchdown from Sunshine here in Trevor Lawrence. If we want to save salary at the QB position, someone that can throw the ball and run as well, Trevor Lawrence in this game, it should be a very high-scoring game here. Trevor Lawrence is looking like a gem at $6K, all right? With everyone going to Mahomes or Jalen Hurts, if you want to save some salary, there is some good decision-making here if you go with Trevor Lawrence at $6K, all right? Last but not least, we have Daniel Jones. This is one of the worst matchups right here. This is the Philadelphia Eagles defense. They did decline in the second half. Obviously, they're getting ready for the playoffs. But this is going to be a tough matchup in Philadelphia. This is the New York Giants team that has not beaten the Philadelphia Eagles in Philly for the past 10 years. So they got a lot going against them. And we're looking at fantasy points allowed to the QB. The Philadelphia Eagles are allowing 26 overall, 19th in the red zone, around 215 yards passing, 1.6 TDs, okay? This is not the Minnesota Vikings defense, all right? He's not going to have a 30-point fantasy day like he did against Minnesota. Minnesota did not stop anything. That was absolutely horrible defense. You're not going to get that from the Philadelphia Eagles. In a previous matchup in Week 14, Daniel Jones only had 19 fantasy points. That's more like it, right? Got a tough, stout defense going up against wide receivers, and they're very good against rushing offenses as well. So Daniel Jones at 5,800, I don't think I would go with him. Obviously, he has upside because of his legs, but the cheapest I would go out of the four quarterbacks would be Trevor Lawrence. All right, let's move on to the running backs. For the running back position, we're going to start at the top. Saquon Barkley, in his first playoff game ever, came on to the scene, had a phenomenal day. Not that many rushing attempts, got 53 yards and got in the end zone twice. Chipped in with 5 receptions, 6 targets, and 56 yards as well. So that was a shining moment for him. He came through against the Minnesota Vikings, which is a Swiss cheese defense. And now he's going up against the division opponent here in the Philadelphia Eagles, where he had in week 14, 6.8 fantasy points. One of his worst performances all year long. And he did not play in week 18. So what do we expect out of Saquon Barkley? We expect a high usage in this particular game against the Eagles. Maybe we're probably going to see more out of the receiving department, less efficiency rushing-wise because the Eagles are a very good rush defense. But if we want to double-check that right now, let's look at fantasy points allowed to that running back position. The Philadelphia Eagles are currently allowing 3.5 yards a carry. They are 10th overall and 22nd in the red zone. So those are some concerning points there for Saquon Barkley there. But the benefit, if you're going to go towards him, all right, he's going to be a little bit lower on my list, is because of the receiving upside. I expect them, say in scenarios they are down, they're going to need to utilize his pass catching ability, and in space, Saquon Barkley can be very, very dangerous. All right. So next guy we're going to talk about will be Travis Etienne. For the Jacksonville Jaguars at $6,400 in salary. Look at the previous matchup against these Chiefs in week. He didn't play. Yes, he did. Week 10. 11 for 45. So if they would have continued with the rush game, maybe he would have been a little more efficient, 4.1 yards to carry. But he did have 3 receptions for 28 yards. Right, they need to utilize Travis Etienne catching ability a little bit more. Let's look at fantasy points allowed to that running back position here. The Kansas City Chiefs are 18th overall and 5th in the red zone. But the key component here is they're giving up 50 yards receiving and about 6.4 catches. This is why I said they need to utilize Travis Etienne and his receiving ability, because he is very, very dynamic outside of that pocket, getting that ball in space, and he can create after that. All right, he has super speed there. Travis Etienne at 6,400 can be a sneaky guy at that price, and I do like the matchup going against the Chiefs if they utilize his receiving ability. All right, so far he's seeing about 2 to 3 receptions a game. Hopefully he can take advantage of those opportunities and maybe have even more. All right, next running back we're going to talk about will be Jerick McKinnon. He's stepped up huge for these Kansas City Chiefs as of late going into these playoffs. As you can see, a strong push here. 35 fantasy points, 34, 12, and 22. Didn't really play much in that game against Las Vegas in Week 18. But he comes in at a $6,000 salary, and we're looking at fantasy points allowed to that running back position. The Jaguars are allowing 20th overall and 23rd in the red zone. 82 yards total, 4 yards a carry. So they've been pretty solid, all right? It's one of the strong points of the Jacksonville Jaguars defense, all right, is stopping the run. A weakness a little bit is receiving, okay? They are allowing about 6.6 catches a game and 50 yards, and that's going to benefit Jerick McKinnon. He is the receiving running back in this offense. Pacheco is between the numbers, and he's going to rush the ball. Jerick McKinnon is going to come mostly third down and receive the ball, okay? As you can see, 2 receptions, 5, 3, 8, 7. You see these numbers here. They utilize Jerick McKinnon at a very high rate, especially receiving wise. So I like him and his receiving ability at $6,000 in salary. All right, let's continue now. See if we see some other gems. I think the best matchup on the board is Miles Sanders at $5,700 in salary here. If we're looking at fantasy points allowed to the running backs, let's go over here. This is a gem right here. The New York Giants are currently 19th overall, 7th in the red zone. But the big stats here, they're allowing 122 rushing yards a game, 5.4 yards a carry a game against opposing running backs. Okay, this is going to bode well for Jalen Hurts, and it's going to bode well for Miles Sanders. I think you need to have Miles Sanders in your lineups for this Saturday slate, or if you want to do the combined Saturday and Sunday, he's the guy that you should be looking for. That is pretty much under $6,000 in salary. He's going to pop off. In a previous game against the Giants, Miles Sanders had in Week 14, 31 fantasy points. This is what I'm talking about. He had 144 yards, 2 TDs, and also chipped in a reception as well. I love Miles Sanders this Saturday. Let's see if we have anyone else. If we go past, like I said, Pacheco, he's more in the in between guy. He's going to be rushing the ball. Doesn't get many receptions at all. He needs to get in the end zone if you decide to go and salary save at the running back position. But I don't think you need to. And weird stat. I think Boston Scott has a weird touchdown stat against the Giants. All right. 10 out of his 17 touchdowns have come against the Giants. So if you want to go with a sneaky play, a punt play here, Boston Scott could be your guy. He's going to see a little bit of a mix in alongside of Miles Sanders. So punt play at running back is going to be Boston Scott, but my top play at running back will be Miles Sanders. Let's move on to the wide receivers. For the wide receivers, we're going to pair our favorite QBs with their opposing wide receivers. The first one we're going to talk about, we got Jalen Hurts here. So we're going to look towards A.J. Brown in a smash spot against these New York Giants. If we're looking at the New York Giants, they are giving up 26th and 25th overall to the wide receiver position, giving up a ton of yards. A.J. Brown is in a great spot. Week 18 limited work, got 13 fantasy points, and in week 14 came through with 17 fantasy points. got you a touchdown in that game as well. A.J. Brown is a stud. I have no problem paying for him at $7,600. The weird thing here is you can go double stack with the wide receivers with A.J. Brown and Smith. Smith has been outstanding, all right? It's looking like he's emerging as the number one wide receiver. 95 receptions, 1,200 yards pretty much receiving. And look at this stretch run the past 5 weeks. 17, 20, 34, 23, and 13. The targets are through the roof. 8, 8, 12, 13, and 8 again. I love Devonta Smith here. A lot of people are going to go with A.J. Brown, but someone that's going to be under the radar and has been super consistent. It doesn't matter if it's Minshew. It definitely doesn't matter if it's Jalen Hurts. Devonta Smith is looking like they got 2 1A studs here at the wide receivers position. Love A.J. Brown, love Devonta Smith. That's going to provide big problems for the Giants. If Dory Jackson is going to be on A.J. Brown, it's going to free up Devonta Smith, okay? Let's see if you don't really need to go to the third wide receiver in Philly, but if you did want to know who it is Quez Watkins. If you're looking for a punt flex option at wide receiver, Quez Watkins could be your guy. He's more screen guy, deep one play guy. Quez Watkins, that's a huge dart throw there. But let's focus on the guys that are going to get more targets. The next grouping of wide receivers we're going to go to these Jacksonville Jaguars and Kansas City Chiefs game. We're going to start off with Christian Kirk here at $6,000 in salary. Came through 8 for 14 with a touchdown against these Chargers. This was a phenomenal acquisition for the Jacksonville Jaguars. And if we're looking at fantasy points allowed to wide receivers, the Chiefs are allowing 12th overall. Let's go over here so you can see. 12th overall and 24th in the red zone. So in these red zone areas, they are giving up the touchdowns to opposing wide receivers. As you can see, 116 yards to wide receivers and about 0.8 TDs, okay? So I have no problem going to Christian Kirk at his salary if you want to save a little bit more. Zay Jones had another game, a very solid number 2 wide receiver here. 8 receptions, 13 targets, 74 yards, and a touchdown. Pretty much the same stat sheet he put up with Christian Kirk, and both of these guys are dangerous. So if you want to save some salary at $4,700 and he has some upside as well, is a guy that's going to receive a lot of targets. We're talking about 90 receptions this year, 897 yards, 6 TDs from Zay Jones in the regular season. He came through with a touchdown in his first playoff game, so I like him at that price at $4,700 in a game that should be very high scoring. All right, and then if you're looking for the third option, flex punt option, Marvin Jones. He saw a nice allotment of targets, as you can see, very consistent in that target department. So if we're looking for a dart throw over Quez Watkins, at least you're getting Marvin Jones with a handful of targets plus a little bit more, with a little bit of an upside to get in the end zone. Look at the consistency here: 6, 6, 7, 4, and 6. In those 5 games, he has 2 touchdowns. So punt play, Marvin Jones is very viable. All right. Next wide receiver group will be the Kansas City Chiefs. So we're going to look here. We got Juju Smith-Schuster at $5,100. He was very solid at the beginning of the season to mid-season, got injury, and things started to turn down just a little bit. We thought week 14 and week 15 things would be turning around, but it's like a seesaw with Juju Smith-Schuster. Then we saw a target decrease in week 17 and 16, all right? So if you want to consider Juju Smith-Schuster, you can, and if you want to take that risk, he does have upside, but the past 3 weeks, it did not look good for him. And the fantasy points allowed to wide receivers, the Jacksonville Jaguars are right next to the Kansas City Chiefs. 13th overall, 26th in the red zone, about 132 yards and about 1 TD a game to that wide receiver position, okay? So 5,100, Juju Smith-Schuster is an okay play. Kadarius Toney might be one of my favorite Chiefs wide receivers. He has upside. He's been utilized a little more, and he's the more dynamic out of all their wide receivers, okay? He gets the ball. He can create. They're using him in multiple facets. They're rushing the football with him. He had 3 rushes in that game in week 18. We saw 12 fantasy points against the Raiders, 10 against Denver. As long as he's healthy, which he is, he has huge upside. He has some good games here earlier in the season, 19 fantasy points against Jacksonville in that first meeting in week 10. So that's a positive sight to see. Kadarius Toney came through against them. So I like him at 4,100. All right. And if we're looking at the wide receivers for the Giants, they might be forced to throw the ball at a very high clip. We're looking at Isaiah Hodgins and Richie James. Those are going to be the top two guys for the New York Giants. Hodgins is the number one, man. This guy's been super consistent each and every week. He looks like the true number one in this offense for the New York Giants. 8 for 9 for 105 in a TD, 4 for 42 in a TD, 8 for 89 in the TD, 4 for 38 in the TD against the Eagles already. So Isaiah Hodgins, man, if you're just looking for someone in the mid-range wide receiver, throw him in there. Love him at below $5,000 in salary. He's the top option for Daniel Jones. Slayton is more of the deep guy. As you can see, at a long of 47. Darius Slayton is going to catch a deep ball, and it's up to him if he can get in the end zone. Usually he doesn't. Obviously, he only has 2 TDs all year long. So the deep guy, Slayton. The main guy is Hodgins. And the short yardage guy is going to be Richie James, okay? So he's going to see the second most in targets. But my favorite Giant will be Isaiah Hodgins. Let's go on to the tight ends. Last but not least, we have that tight end position. Tight ends went off in that wild card round. Each game, I think a tight end had scored a touchdown in each one of those games, okay? So it's going to be very key here that we look at the right tight ends, and maybe multiple tight ends would go off in these games in the divisional round. Let's start off at the top here. Travis Kelce here for the Kansas City Chiefs. This is the number one target for the Kansas City Chiefs, okay? There's no trying to fade him. If we're looking at fantasy points allowed to that tight end position, let's just double check over here. These Jacksonville Jaguars, this is one of their weak points here. So we expect a game from Travis Kelce. Jacksonville Jaguars, 27th overall, 23rd in the red zone, allowing about 5 catches, 65 yards a game, okay, to that tight end position. Earlier in the season, Travis Kelce came through with 20 fantasy points, so 6 for 81 and a TD. Another phenomenal performance from Travis Kelce. Have no problem paying up for him at $7,700 in salary. Next guy I want to talk about will be Dallas Goedert, all right? So he's seeing a handful of usage here. So you're rolling the dice with Dallas Goedert. Obviously, all the targets are going to A.J. Brown. They're going to Devonta Smith. You're seeing more Miles Sanders. And then the third option here, fourth option is Dallas Goedert. Still in a decent spot here. A previous game against the Giants, 10 fantasy points. And then earlier in the season, he did not face the Giants in that particular game. But if we're looking at fantasy points allowed to that tight end position, these New York Giants are in the middle of the league here. 16th overall, 21st in the red zone. So they're in the red zone. There's a high probability that Dallas Goedert will come through with a touchdown, okay? So don't shy away from him at $4,500 in salary. So far, my top play is still Travis Kelce, all right? Next guy I want to talk about is Evan Ingram here. We got Namor from Marvel here. 7 for 11 for 93 yards, 1 TD. I love Evan Ingram. Doug Peterson loves his tight ends. He still throws to that tight end position at a 30% clip. So you got to keep playing Evan Ingram, all right? If you want to go double tight end, you definitely can do that in this game between Jacksonville and Kansas City Chiefs. Maybe a prop of Evan Ingram TD and Travis Kelce TD. That can definitely happen this weekend. And look at the Kansas City Chiefs. This is one of their weak points. 28th overall, 27th in the red zone, allowing 56 yards and about 0.8 TDs a game to that tight end position. Like I said, a high usage rate for Evan Ingram. That's why you see these big numbers from him. I love what he did against the Chargers. He's going to do something very similar against these Kansas City Chiefs. Had 80 catches this year, so a big bounce back year for him. Glad to see that. He had one of the greatest rookie seasons in tight end history, and now he's finally popping back on the scene. Took a risk with the Jacksonville Jaguars, but a very solid and great decision to go and team up with Doug Peterson. Love him at $4,300. He's my number 2 tight end option of the week. All right. Next guy we are going to look at will be Daniel Bellinger. Daniel Bellinger for the New York Giants here at $3,000 salary. If you want to go past all the high price guys, get a little risky here. Daniel Bellinger came through with a touchdown against the Minnesota Vikings. Let's look at fantasy points allowed to that tight end position for these Eagles. The Eagles are, let's see, not too far behind. 23rd overall, 13th in the red zone, allowing 60 yards to the tight end position, but they have not allowed a touchdown all year long. Does that trend break? All right, that's going to be a big question here. Daniel Bellinger is their number one tight end. So, if you want to roll the dice at $3,000 in salary, I don't think you need to go there. I like the other guys, Kelsey and Ingram, and even Goddard. Those are better options. So if we're looking at any other tight end, could it be a number two tight end that gets in the end zone? Sure, it could be. Kansas City use a myriad of tight ends. They use Noah Gray and Blake Bell. If I had to choose one out of two, it would be Noah Gray here. He's seeing a little bit of work each and every week. And then the Jacksonville Jaguars, their main receiving tight end is Evan Ingram. So other than that, we are not going past Evan Ingram, okay? You don't need to go to Daniel Bellinger. So you stick with Evan Ingram, Dallas Goedert, and Travis Kelce, and you will be fine for this week. So thank you guys for tuning in. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Make sure you follow me on Instagram and Twitter at MessNetJSD, and I'll be back with another video very soon, all right? Peace out, guys.